were an intellectual group versus a true revolutionary group, and that they needed to start recruiting people from the working class, from the military, Vietnam veterans, and people who were streetwise. And here I am. I'm all of those things. And so, it happened at a very opportune time as far as my being able to infiltrate the group. Ultimately, when the group went underground in December of, the decision to go underground was made in December of 1969. The group actually went underground in January of 70, and I was the only informant left after they had purged the group. What they did was kick anybody out that they didn't think was capable of going underground with them. Their belief being that you had to be fervently dedicated to the revolution and mentally and emotionally capable of committing these acts of strategic sabotage. It was planned that we were going to place bombs and kill people, assassinate people, kidnap people, amongst other things, to essentially serve the North Vietnamese and other national liberation fights in the world, and ultimately to bring the U.S. government down, to destroy U.S. imperialism.
But what were the communists thinking? I mean, if that really would have happened, and some of it did, it would only unify people against communists. But I mean, it's such a sophisticated question. But I guess nowadays we're losing all our liberties because of so-called terrorist threats. It's just ridiculous.
Well, actually, I think that after the group went underground and began their strategic sabotage, they began to realize, especially with the end of the war in Vietnam, that this support group, the youth movement as they called it, dissipated. It no longer had a key issue to be organized around. And I think that when they surfaced during the 80s, they decided to approach this on a more political level, and I think that's where we find people like Barack Obama.
Yeah, stay there. I want to come back and get into their plans to kill 25 million Americans and the fact they basically run the country today. Larry Grathwohl is our guest. And you just heard the clip earlier, or if you just tuned in, inside the highest levels of the Weathermen meetings, many people that are, advisors of the president, friends of his, all over the government, their children in the government, openly saying re-education camps. So accelerating this, you're one of the only people able to infiltrate the highest levels as they go underground. Bring us to the point and maybe remind people of some of the terror attacks they launched and what they were planning to do once they got control. Sounds just like Russia or China, where they just shut everything off and watch, in the case of China, 60-something million starve to death. I mean, they're just a bunch of demons. Please continue.
Well, that was actually was at a meeting that took place in Cleveland, Ohio, during our preparation for going underground. So actually, this conversation concerning the 25 million people being eliminated was prior to the group beginning its strategic sabotage. What happened was we were actually planning how we were going to go about doing this, who we were going to keep and who we were going to purge. And during one of these meetings, I asked, well, what are we going to do when we take over? We obviously believe that we're going to succeed, and then we're going to be in charge. We're going to have to do something. And people sat there and looked at me like I had three heads. I guess it had never really been considered. But then the conversation focused on the first priority would be to protect ourselves against the counter-revolution. The belief being that there would be an upwelling of American patriots that would try to reverse our success in the revolution, and that we would have to protect ourselves and the new socialism against that event. So it was decided that approximately 100 million people would have to be re-educated, some of them being placed in re-education camps that would be built in the Southwest, and that of this approximately 100 million people, approximately a quarter or 25 million would not be re-educated and therefore would have to be eliminated. Now, the means of eliminating these people, of course, was to kill them. And in some instances, they would simply be starved to death. In other instances, such as people like myself who had worked against the revolution, would be immediately shot or executed in some way. Of course, that would include people like Nixon and others who were too conservative to even waste the time trying to re-educate them. The amazing thing was to consider that of these people that were attending this meeting, Bill Ayers, Mark Redd, Linda Evans, Kathy Wilkerson, these are all well-educated people. They come from upper middle class or upper class backgrounds, and in most cases had attended some of the most prestigious universities in the country.
Yeah, they weren't just shooting their mouths off. Everything they talked about, they were trying to carry out. I mean, they bombed police officers. They killed. Yes. I mean, they killed people.
Oh yes. The interesting story is after we went underground, I was assigned to Detroit, Michigan, and in Detroit, Bill Ayers had created a cell, a very large cell. It contained about 7 or 8 people. And he told us that we should put bombs at the 13th Precinct, the police precinct, and the Detroit Police Officers Association building. That we should time these bombings to go off simultaneously and to place the bombs at a time when it would kill the greatest number of people. There was a Red Barn restaurant next door to the DPOA building, and I pointed out that would probably sustain the most damage. And since this restaurant was in a black neighborhood, that it would obviously wind up killing a lot of blacks. And his response was that sometimes in a revolution, innocent people have to die. I find that, most disturbing because, Bill claimed to have such loyalty to the black community and to the black liberation movement. I would point out that I was reassigned to Madison, Wisconsin before these bombings actually took place. And
Larry Grathwohl, incredible long segment coming up. Let's continue with what they did after that, other mass killings they talked about, what they plan to do once they took over. And then I want to point out Homeland Security today is shifting from Al-Qaeda to domestic groups, and it's arranging itself to go after us, the counter-revolution. Larry Grathwohl is our guest. He basically stumbled into the Weathermen because they were trying to recruit him, and then volunteered because they were such dangerous people to infiltrate them, and he witnessed some incredible things. Larry, continuing with some of the crimes they committed, and then what is it like for you to see Clinton let them out of prison, and then Obama parading around with them? And then meanwhile, I'm sure you've seen all the Homeland Security reports that have come out where they're now saying gun owners, libertarians, returning veterans, people that don't like a global government or socialist health care or a new world order, we're now the terrorist. As they announce this new world order, they're teaching the police, because the police are the ones that send it to us, that literally the founding fathers are bad. The exact type of stuff you'd imagine to have Mao Zedong teaching or something. Please continue.
Yes, well, let me finish about Detroit. I was reassigned to Madison, Wisconsin, and I didn't actually participate in those bombings, but Bill Ayers debriefed us extensively, and when I left Detroit, I told the FBI that I believed that those bombings would take place within a couple of days of the original target date. Ironically, they had a surveillance on those locations, but they didn't see the bombs placed, and they found 13 sticks of dynamite at the DPOA building and 34 sticks of dynamite at the 13th Precinct. The bomb at the 13th precinct was set to go off during a shift change, and it was placed on a window ledge. The bomb itself consisted of dynamite and fence staples and roofing nails to act as shrapnel. In other words, to kill and wound. Now, what's important about this is that bomb that was left in those two locations in Detroit is an exact duplicate of the bomb that was placed at the Park Police Station in San Francisco in February of 1970 that resulted in the death of Sergeant Brian McDonald. The bomb was placed on a window ledge. It consisted of roofing nails and fence staples, so it was basically the same design. Now, the Park Police Station the Pine Street bomb factory that the FBI discovered, Max Knoll and some FBI agents found it, and fingerprints that were found at that location included Bill Ayers and several others. And Bill Ayers, during a criticism session, told me that Bernadine Dorn had placed that bomb at the Park Police Station, and later this was confirmed by one of the members of the Weather Underground who turned. Her name was Karen Latimer, and she said that she had driven Bernadine to the Park Police Station the night of the bombing. And the reason I make that point, again, is because of the similarity of the bombs used in Detroit and then the one at the Park Police Station. And the importance of this is that these are three bombings, two attempts, and one that actually occurred, of many bombings that the Weathermen were involved in during the 70s and the 80s. So these people were serious, and their point of strategic sabotage and their goal of overthrowing the government. And they seriously believed that they were going to succeed in destroying the United States and what they called U.S. imperialism. Now, as far as the connections that exist today, it's amazing when you think about it that the President of the United States has been good friends with Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers, and his response when he's been confronted with this fact is that, he was only 8 years old when these events were occurring. Well, that doesn't take anything away from the fact that he's still friends with ex-domestic terrorists who have shown absolutely no repentance for what they did. As a matter of fact, Bill Ayers has stated that his only regret is that they didn't do enough. And there's a picture of him standing on the American flag making a comment, "Guilty as hell, free as a bird, isn't America a wonderful country?" Now that's throwing it in our face, so to speak. And you're right, Bill Clinton has pardoned some of these people. Others, such as Kathy Bodine, has been paroled. Now, Kathy Bodine and her husband, Dave Gilbert, were involved in a Brinks robbery in New Jersey in the 80s that resulted in the death of a Brinks guard and two New Jersey state troopers. This was a combination of the Weathermen and the Black Liberation Army. Now, Dave Gilbert's still in prison, but Kathy Bodine has been paroled, and their son, Chessa, was adopted and raised by Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers. Do you notice how these loops keep coming back?
Well, what about Frank Marshall Davis over